Ask yourself the question, what most fear you in the ocean? Most of us surely answer that depth, that which is invisible. Darkness, which stretches kilometers below us, where pressure crushes steel and light of sun never reaches. It is there, in our collective imagination, we locate real monsters. We think of Leviathan, of ancient megalodon patrolling the endless abyss, of the Kraken pulling ships into the gloom. But that is fundamental error in perception. Evolution repeatedly proved that greatest danger at all not must lurk in darkness. Sometimes it lurks in full sunshine. Imagine yourselves in a lagoon from 112 million years ago. Water is warm and crystal clear, bottom sea even several meters down. Everything looks calm until here suddenly something obscures the sun. A huge shadow moves just under the surface. Not in the deep, but in quite shallow water, there, where few would ever expect a threat. In a fraction of a second, the silence breaks with an explosion of water and snapping jaws. One of the largest marine predators of its time, with skull long on 3 meters and teeth as thick as ripe bananas, it certainly didn't hunt in the deep ocean. Instead, it lurked right here, in warm, shallow lagoons and coastal waters, always ready to swiftly attack anything that moved. This is the story of a predator that turned the sun-drenched inland seas into its own personal arena of death. Kronosaurus is a genus of a large carnivorous pliosaur. It belonged to class Sauropsids, order plesiosaurs, family pliosaurs, and genus Kronosaurus. In order to understand this predator, we must first understand its world. And world of Kronosaurus was world of water, immense and full of life. Early Cretaceous is the time of global warming. The sea level was much higher than today, and ice sheets practically not existed. There, where today stretch dry deserts of Central Australia, then spread out the ocean, we call it the Eromanga Sea. It was not deep ocean like Pacific, but gigantic, shallow inland sea. In deepest places reached maybe 100 meters, but in most it was much shallower, perfect for life and for hunting. The water was cool and clear. It teemed with creatures. Swam here flocks of ammonites, schools of fish and prehistoric turtles. Between them, majestically floated long-necked plesiosaurs, such as Eromangasaurus, and right next zipped ichthyosaurs, and fast like torpedoes, platipterygiuses, resembling prehistoric dolphins. This was truly a land of abundance, but every ecosystem has its ultimate peak of the food chain. And in the vast Eromanga Sea, at its peak, sat the very hero of our film, the mighty Kronosaurus queenslandicus. The history of this discovery begins modestly. In 1889, in the remote Queensland region of Australia, a certain Andrew Crombie found a mysterious piece of bone in which 6 large conical teeth were embedded. Intrigued and puzzled, he gave the finding to the museum in Queensland, whose curator was Haber Longman. Longman for years studied this fragment. It was only in 1924 when more material finally and gradually appeared, including an incomplete skull found in the same remote isolated place in 1929. Longman officially described the new species. He gave it the name Kronosaurus queenslandicus, lizard of Kronos from Queensland. Longman at once instinctively knew that he had to do with an alpha predator. But the real breakthrough finally came, about 3 important years later, in 1932. William E. Sheville, leading an expedition of paleontologists from Harvard University, provided plenty of fossil records, making up almost complete skeleton. Preparation and assembly of the Kronosaurus silhouette took another 20 years, due to the difficulties with obtaining financial support for this project. Since the year 1977, we dispose of even greater amount of excavations from Villa de Leyva in Colombia, which allowed to recreate even fuller skeleton of animal. Reconstructions of the first skeletons suggested that the Kronosaurus could reach very impressive lengths of 12.8 meters. However, later, research showed the primary model contained too many vertebrae, a mistake overstating the dimensions. Today, it is estimated that an adult individual was about 9 to 10 meters long and weighed close to 10 tons, which still made him one of the largest marine reptiles to exist on the planet. Just like other pliosaurs, Kronosaurus was a marine reptile, but not a dinosaur. Its body was created for life in water. It had elongated head, large eyes, and a short, massive neck. The torso was completed with 4 powerful flippers and a short pointed tail, which most likely helped very effectively with maneuvering. The skull of the Kronosaurus was flattened at the top and was about 2.5 meters long. It constituted as much as 1/4 of the animal's total length. On its surface were nostrils, which allowed it to sense odors under the water, a feature rarely encountered among other marine reptiles. Its dentition leaves no doubt as to its diet. Long, conical teeth clearly indicate that it was a carnivorous predator. It had around 80 of these in total, and each one could reach up to 25 centimeters in length. In contrast to many other pliosaurs, the teeth of Kronosaurus were not serrated nor 3-sided. The front ones served for grabbing and tearing, whereas the rear ones were strong enough to crush hard shells of turtles, ammonites, or bodies of cephalopods. Similarly to contemporary crocodiles, Kronosaurus could sink its teeth into the body of a victim and tear out whole pieces of meat. Smaller animals it simply swallowed whole. Its shoulder girdle, just like in all sauropterygians, was strongly transformed and gave it precise control over the flippers. Additionally, it had abdominal ribs, which stiffened the body during fast swimming. Everything in its anatomy clearly indicates that it was a strong, agile, and active creature. Kronosaurus was a marine reptile. We do not know whether females came onto land to lay eggs in the sand, or, like modern whales, gave birth to their young in the water. One thing is certain: it breathed air. It had lungs, and therefore had to regularly surface to take a breath again in open water before diving back into the deep. Its enormous size did not allow for prolonged pursuit. But 4 powerful flippers gave it something equally deadly: the ability to instantaneous, short bursts. Fossils prove that it could attack everything that dared to swim into its territory, from huge squids and sea turtles to other reptiles, such as plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and even prehistoric sharks. In its hunting method, it resembled the great white shark. It was not picky. If something moved, it was potential meal. Sufficed one fast move, one strike of flippers, and water around turned into a cloud of blood. It is also worth placing Kronosaurus in the ranking of giants. For years, Liopleurodon was considered to be the largest pliosaur in history, mainly thanks to the BBC series Walking with Dinosaurs, which presented it as a monster of length 25 meters. We know this was a television exaggeration. In reality, Liopleurodon measured merely 6, maybe 7 meters. And this means that Kronosaurus, reaching about 10 meters of length, was from it significantly larger. Was it the largest of all? Probably not. On the distant north, in the icy waters of today's Svalbard, remains of another pliosaur were discovered, a mysterious predator, which initially bore the name Predator X. Today we know him as Plesiosaurus funke. Estimates speak of length from 10 to 13 meters, and perhaps even more. However, though it was not a record holder, precisely Kronosaurus remained the most recognizable titan. Its almost complete skeletons discovered in Australia and Colombia made it an icon of prehistoric oceans, a symbol of the era, where seas belonged not to sharks, but to reptiles more powerful than everything, which swims today on Earth.